As you could tell, we're going to be observing the Lord's Supper. So I thought I'd go back to the origin of the Lord's Supper. Exodus chapter 12 is where we're at. Exodus chapter 12. Last Sunday, believe it or not, was Easter. This time last week, I was half asleep going, man, I got up early. And, you know, we had a good service, good sunrise service, a good morning service, and, you know, we've been throughout the week, and now it's like, wow, it's already been another week. My grandma used to tell me, you know, that's longer than a month of Sundays, and the older I get, a month of Sundays just doesn't seem like that'd be very long anymore, you know? They go right on by. But last Sunday was Easter. But also last Sunday was the period of the Passover for the Jews. It's a 7-8 day, depending upon how you figure it, period of time where they observe the Feast of the Unleavened Bread, and they, in the midst of that, also celebrate the Passover celebration. And they do that because of what we are going to read here in Exodus chapter 12. It says there, "Now the Lord said to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, This month shall be the beginning of months for you. It shall be the first month of the year to you. Speak to all the congregation of Israel, saying, On the 10th of this month, they are each one to take a lamb for themselves, according to their fathers' households, a lamb for each household. Now if the household is too small for a lamb, then he and his neighbor nearest to his house are to take one according to the number of persons in them, according to what each man should eat, you are to divide the lamb. Your lamb shall be an unblemished male, a year old. You may take it from the sheep or from the goats. You shall keep it until the 14th day of the same month. Then the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel is to kill it at twilight. Moreover, you shall take some of the blood and put it on the 2 doorposts and on the lintel of the house in which they eat it. They shall eat the flesh that same night, roasted with fire, and they shall eat it with unleavened bread and with bitter herbs. Do not eat any of it raw or boiled at all with water, but rather roasted with fire, both its head and its legs, along with its entrails. And you shall not leave any of it over until morning. But whatever is left of it until morning you shall burn with fire. Now you shall eat it in this manner, with your loins girded, your sandals on your feet, and your staff in your hand. You shall eat it in haste. It is the Lord's Passover. For I will go through the land of Egypt on that night, and will strike down all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast. Against all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgment. I am Yahweh, the Lord. The blood shall be a sign for you on the houses where you live, and when I see the blood I will pass over you, and no plague will befall you to destroy you when I strike the land of Egypt." Let's stop there for a minute. We've got one verse left to read. Has anybody not ever read that passage before? I mean, if you haven't, it's okay. Just kind of think it's probably one that all of us are familiar with, right? I mean, there's nobody here that says, wow, I've never read that. That's totally unfamiliar to me. And, you know, there's all sorts of things in there that we could talk about. And you see, you know, God says, this is how I want you to do it, and this is what I'm going to do. But I want you to look at verse 14. "Now this day will be a memorial to you, and you shall celebrate it as a feast to the Lord throughout your generations. You are to celebrate it as a permanent ordinance." He tells them how to do it, what to do, and then he makes a statement to them that you are to celebrate it as a permanent ordinance. All your generations, as an everlasting ordinance. The nation of Israel, as part of the covenant, was to do this. And that's what they do. That's why they did last week what they did. is that God has said that throughout all time we need to observe this Passover meal. You ever wonder why God told them to do that? Because He doesn't say that with everything. He doesn't tell them that they're supposed to, all the time throughout all of history do certain things. There's just certain events in the Bible that God says that I want you to celebrate as a permanent observance. You ever wondered why? You ever wondered why, if God has said that this is to be celebrated as a permanent ordinance, that today's people of God don't do this? You ever wondered that? You ever thought, wow, I see on my calendar it says Passover. Guess I better break out the unleavened bread. Better gird up my loins. And half of you are going, I don't even know what that means. And it doesn't sound comfortable. I better get my cane out. I better bring that lamb into my house. You ever thought about that? If you haven't, I want you to think about it now. I want you to ask yourself those two questions. Why would God want them to observe this meal for all time, without end? And why don't we do it? Why is it that we do not, bring out the lamb and get out the bitter herbs and, get ourselves all ready to go, which is basically what they were doing, getting their clothes all packed and their shoes on and ready to go. Why is it that we don't do that? Well, let's explore the first one. Why is it that God wants the Israelites to do this forever? To answer that question, you got to start with asking the question, what is the Passover? So let me ask you, and this is not rhetorical, please answer if you feel comfortable. What is the Passover? Why do they observe the Passover? What is Passover?
It's when they were in Egypt.
Okay.
They were trying to get Pharaoh to let them loose.
Okay.
And this was when they were going to bring the plague over Egypt and kill all the firstborn, and they had to protect themselves if they were the believers.
Okay.
And do what they would put the blood on the lintel to keep the Spirit of God to save their household as He passed over and
okay.
killed the firstborn in Egypt.
So the Passover then is to commemorate this event? Is that what you're saying?
And make them believe all, to mark them as the people of God.
Okay. All right. Someone else? Add to that?
It's to make them remember that God actually saved them out of Egypt.
Okay. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
And it carries on through centuries, because when Jesus died, He was the Lamb of God. He replaced the lamb in the sacrifice.
Okay, so you're saying that the observance of it had more to do with than just that event. Okay? Anyone else? That kind of cover it? If you go online and you look up a place called Passover.org, they give you this definition. Like that little boy chewing on that matzah bread. The 8-day festival of Passover is celebrated in the early spring from the 15th to the 22nd of the Hebrew month of Nisan. It commemorates the emancipation of the Israelites from slavery in ancient Egypt. That's what Mike was saying, that's what Bob was saying. By following the rituals of Passover, we have the ability to relive and experience the true freedoms that our ancestors gained. Okay, this is a Jewish website. This is their understanding of the Passover. Sound right? Commemorate the event, and that by commemorating that event, we as their ancestors remember the freedom that we have. Okay, sound good? If you go to Wikipedia, it says this: Passover is a Jewish holiday and festival. It commemorates the story of the Exodus, in which the ancient Israelites were freed from slavery in Egypt. Good synopsis? I like Wikipedia. You know, kind of sums it up real good. The Passover is a commemoration of the story of the Exodus. Everybody in agreement? It's not what God says. It's not. God doesn't say that the Passover is the commemoration of the event. Take a look, if you would, please, at verses 12 and 13 of what we just read. I will go through the land of Egypt on that night, and I will strike down all the firstborn of the land of Egypt, both male, man and beast, and against all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgment. I am Yahweh. The blood shall be a sign for you on the house where you live. And when I see the blood, I will, what? Pass over you, and no plague will befall you when I strike the land of Egypt. He says nothing there about their bondage, does he not? He says nothing about you passing over the Red Sea and finding freedom in the promised land, does he not? He says, this meal you observe has to do everything with this plague of the death of the firstborn and the fact that you have killed this lamb, stained your doorposts, and my judgment passes over you. So what is the Passover? In due respect to the Jews, and in due respect to Wikipedia, and due respect to many of us who are taught to believe that the Passover is all about the liberation of the Jews, the liberation of the Jews is just the context. The event is there's death coming, and I'm going to protect you, and the angel will pass over. So it's about the deliverance, not so much from captivity in the land of Egypt, but it's about the deliverance of Israel from death. God was going to go through the land. God was going to kill the firstborn, but he made a provision for the Israelites that they would be able to avoid this if they would do certain things. Jump down to verses 23 through 27 of the same chapter in which we're in. Listen to what he says. He goes on and he tells them about the memorial of the feast and what they should do, and then he says, for the Lord will pass through to smite. I love that word, smite. And this sounds so biblical. You know, your mom doesn't say to you, I'm going to smite you. You know, she says, I'm going to spank you. God smites. He says, I'm going to smite the Israelites. And when he sees the blood on the lintel and on the two doorposts, the Lord will pass over the door and will not allow the destroyer to come into your house to smite you. And you will observe this event as an ordinance for you and your children forever. When you enter the land which the Lord will give you as he promised, you shall observe this rite. So he's reiterating what he said. God does that a lot. You ever notice that in the Bible? God reiterates. You know why God reiterates? Because we don't remember. Yeah, a lot of times we go, well, God suffers short-term memory loss. No, we suffer short-term memory loss. So he says, here, 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 and yet here again. So he says to them again, this is what you need to do. When you enter the promised land, you are to do this. Verse 26, and when your children say to you, what does this rite mean to you? Papa, why do we observe Passover? Papa, why is it that we go through all of this? Papa, why is it that we bring that lamb? And you ever think about that? They brought that little lamb into the house to live with them for 4 days before they took a blade to it. Papa, why do we do this? Verse 27, this will be your answer. It is a Passover sacrifice to the Lord, who passed over the houses of the sons of Israel in Egypt, when he smote the Egyptians, but spared our homes as the people bowed, and the people bowed low and worshiped. He didn't say anything about being delivered from captivity, did he? Papa, why do we do this? Because death was coming, and God provided a way for us to be delivered. That is the Passover. That is what, as we saw from some of the readings, apparently they have forgotten. Oh, it's about us remembering the freedom. It's about us celebrating the deliverance of Israel. And then we say that. We as the New Testament heirs of the law and the covenant, we say that. Say, oh, it's a memorial. It's about their deliverance. No. God said, this right out of God's mouth. It is a Passover sacrifice to the Lord, who passed over the houses of the sons of Israel in Egypt when he smote the Egyptians, but he spared our homes, and the people bowed low and worshipped. Man, we were delivered. Not just that we were set free, but we were delivered. That could have been my home. That could have been my son. But God saw the blood, and God passed over my home. That is Passover. Isn't that wonderful? Man, I wish that Israel saw that. I wish that Israel remembered that. Don't you? Don't you? Because you realize that though they are faithfully observing via tradition the commandment of Passover, they're missing it. They're doing it, but they've gotten caught up in the how. They follow the letter of the law, and they dress ready to go, and they do all the things that the law commands them to do, that the Talmud has added and said they need to do, but they've missed the why. They don't get it. Like, well, this is what we do, and Papa, why do we do this? Well, you see, a long time ago in a land far, far away, Yoda came to the people. Oh no, wait a minute, that's another story. Moses came to our ancestors and he delivered them, and then we have to dress this way, and we have to eat this food, and we have to do this because, and never once do they mention that we were under a penalty of sin, and the blood caused God's judgment to pass over us. I wish they would realize that. I really, really, really wish they would, because until they do, they're still under the condemnation of sin. Just like everyone else who does not realize that death is a-coming. Second question that I'd like you to consider that I posed to you earlier is, well, if this is a permanent ordinance, and it obviously is, right? Verse 14, I want you to do this forever. Why don't we do it? Why don't we bring the lamb in? I'll have him live in your house, not mine. I'll let you kill it, not me, or not I. But why don't we bring the lamb in and do those sort of things? Why don't we follow the letter of the law? Well, I would tell you that we do. I would tell you that we do observe the Passover. Only we call it the Lord's Supper. And we go, well, it doesn't look like it. Don't get caught up in the how. Get caught up in the why. Why do we observe the Lord's Supper? If I were to ask you that question other than rhetorically, this is rhetorical. Don't answer. This might be your answer. Because we want to remember that Jesus, met with his disciples before he was betrayed, before he was crucified. We want to remember that he died, that he was crucified, that he was buried, and that he rose again. Sound good? No! We want to remember that you and I are under a penalty of sin and death. And that because of the shed blood of the Lamb, God's judgment has passed over us. And then I pick up that bread, which should have been my body. And I pick up that cup, which reminds me of His blood. And I realize my sin is paid and a way to God has been made. And I celebrate that. I'm not just remembering something that happened, but I'm remembering the reality of my life. Papa, why do we do this? Well, let me tell you, honey, I'm a sinner. And my sin invited God's judgment. But God has provided a way whereby my sin might be forgiven. And it's through the shed blood of Jesus Christ. And every time I come to this meal, I remember that. So what if it doesn't look like it? The essential elements are there. You know, as the Son of God, as God incarnate, Jesus had the authority to change the way we do it. Matter of fact, if you want to look in Matthew chapter 26, it says this, that while they were eating the Passover, Jesus took some bread, and after He blessed it, He broke it, and He gave it to His disciples, and He said, "Take, eat, this is my body." He didn't say, taking that matzah bread, "Take, eat, this is the bread that they cooked without yeast because they had to leave in haste." That's what He held in His hand. He said, "I'm giving it a new meaning." We've got the same purpose, but I'm giving this a new meaning. It's no longer the haste with which we left. It is now my body that is about to be broken for you. It's about my body that takes your place. They took it. They ate it. Then He gave them the cup. Something that wasn't commanded, but who eats and doesn't drink? And He adds the significance, drawing their attention to the blood, and says, "This is my blood, drink it." It's the blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sin. He took those elements and He changed their meaning. But the purpose is still there. I'm under a death penalty, and I'm about to be forgiven. Every time, Paul told the church in Corinth, every time you partake of this meal, you do what? Do you remember what it says there in 1 Corinthians 11? We do proclaim the Lord's death until He comes. Did I put that one up there? No? Every time we take this, we do not proclaim what was done. We proclaim the reality of what happened to me and what needs to happen to every person that's ever lived. Jesus died for our sins. That's what this meal is about. That is what the Passover was about. If you doubt that, let me point you to two other indicators. Where did they put the blood? On the lintel, right? The top of it. And on the doorposts, the side of it. What do you make? A cross. Let me point you to the book of Revelation, chapter 5, verses 8 and 9, and I ask you to turn there, please. Revelation chapter 5, verses 8 and 9. This is a scene in heaven where the scroll, which, a lot of theologians talk about, and, well, what is this scroll all about? And it's got the 7 seals, and most kind of infer that this throne, or this scroll, is the title deed of the earth, that which had been surrendered to Satan back when man sinned. But take a look at verse 8. They're standing there and they're saying, who's worthy to take this scroll, this book? It says that there came one to take it, and when he had taken the book, The 4 living creatures and the 24 elders fell down before the Lamb, each one holding a harp and golden bowls full of incense, which are the prayers of the saints. And they sang a new song, saying, Worthy are you to take the book and to break its seal, for you were slain and purchased for God with your blood men from every tribe and tongue and people and nation. Do it forever. Why? Because in forever, that's what it's about. You, the Lamb who was slain, have purchased for God with your blood people from every tribe, tongue, people, and nation. That is what this meal is about. And that is what church is about. Therefore, church transcends location and event and number. Church is about being the people of God gathered together in worship of God and in service of God. A people united not in our practice, but by a sacrifice. Just like the nation of Israel. You people could have died in Egypt, but I provided a way. You go, yeah, boy, didn't he? That lamb, no. The way he provided for them is the way that he's provided for us. And that's the person of Christ.